everybody, it's Romania Black, and I hope my mic's working today. This microphone, I have not had it a year. I don't think I've had it a year. Have I had it a year? I don't know. I've had it not very long in relation to other equipment on this channel, but let me tell you, it has been giving me a lot of trouble. I didn't realize until I was editing that last week this was not picking up on the lovely computer and translating, so I didn't have that. So I had to rely on the audio from the camera, which luckily that is a thing, so that's good, because I had another series where halfway through the discussion, I may have turned my mic off, and there was no sound, and I was really mad about that. So I have coffee today, and it's all better. So we're on part 4 of Run with the Wind. I did not go back and rewatch any of the anime yet because I had a sneaking suspicion that we're going to cover a lot. I feel like the anime is going to be out of order, is what I think. Because last week we talked about like them getting the shirts to do promotion, which in my mind happens way later in the anime than early on. And so I feel like I want to read this part because it's called Track Meets. And then possibly because we haven't even met Kakeru's old teammate. We haven't even met him. We haven't done any of that yet. So I'm like, when's that going to happen? So I feel like I want to wait, and after this section, then I'll probably watch a couple episodes and see if we touch base on any of these concepts or not. And I'm recording these two parts fairly close together because I want to try to catch up and get ahead of schedule like I have with my other shows. So that's why I'm kind of prioritizing this. So I hope you all are enjoying the reading so far, though. I am in love with the book. I'm in love with it. I absolutely love it. I may like it more than the anime. I usually like anime an awful lot because it's such a great medium, but I'm going to be honest, I really like this novel, and I may like the way that it presents everything a little bit more than the anime. And I did not expect that to happen. I thought, oh, we're going to read this book, and it's going to be exactly like the anime, and what's the point? No, it is very different, and so I'm super excited about that, and I'm glad that I have it. So again, thank you, Zero Anti-Zero, for getting that to us. But yeah, we're going to dive right in. I've got my coffee. We've got everything pulled up. The mic is working so far. Knock on some form of wood, and we're going to have fun with it. But yeah, leave a comment down below if you agree that you're liking the novel as much or maybe more than the anime. And we're only on part 3. We have 10 parts, so, you know, I did the math, and this is going to get us past when the Hakone Ekiden actually does take place in the calendar. Like, we're going to finish this book up mid-January, but that's fine. That's okay. Then I'll just be sad and in withdrawals for Run with the Wind again, and my watch will continue. So we're going to dive into part 4 of Run with the Wind, the novel reaction, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1... and let's go. Spring to early summer was track meet season. Almost every week there were track meets for setting official records hosted by universities or Kyokukai, and competitive races co-sponsored by corporations or Kyogikai. With the short-term goal of the Kyokukai meet just around the corner, everyone put their backs into practice more than ever. Now only Prince and King were jogging with Kiyose in the mornings and evenings. The rest of the group could wake up without Kiyose's pop banging, at least for the most part, and were eager to follow through with their regimen each day. And Kiyose guided each of them in different styles according to their personalities, though always with a light touch. That seems very Kiyose. For Shindo, who took pleasure in making steady progress fulfilling his quota, Kiyose devised a more detailed plan. With Yuki, he engaged in lengthy discussions about training methods until Yuki's theorist instincts were satisfied. Because Jodo was the type to thrive on praise, Kiyose often called out to him during practice, and with Joji, who kept going even if he was left alone, Kiyose avoided the subject of running altogether. I love this. I love that he's like, I like one, that the twins are different. That part's great. But I also like that he's getting each little bit. I would have loved to have seen that in the anime, and I think we did get some of that in the anime. It'll be fun to go back and check that out. But to see how he was kind of like, Kiyose was tailoring each regimen to like their personalities and everything, that's great. By and large, Kiyose was letting them run as they wished. He gave them a thorough explanation of the training plan and merely offered a bit of advice to those who needed it. This way, he kindled motivation in each of them. Kakeru felt as if he were witnessing a magic spell at work. Kiyose didn't use force or punishment, and he waited patiently, ever so tenaciously, until they got in the mood for running. Never in his life had Kakeru seen a coach use an approach like this. Oh, now, come on now. Come on. You giving us all this bit with Kakeru and Haiji? Mm-hmm. If only Haiji had been my coach when I got into track, I might have been a faster runner by now, Kakeru thought, as he watched the Chikuseso members slowly but surely shorten their running times. Yet at the same time, Kiyose's attitude felt too soft for Kakeru. Kiyose was dealing with newbie runners, and still practically amateurs. If he didn't push them harder, they wouldn't improve fast enough to be ready for the prelim. Kakeru was frustrated. Is he really serious about Hakone? Why doesn't he show it? Ooh, so here's maybe that tension that we see in the anime. One night, they were all drinking together in the twins' room when Kiyose made an announcement. Most of you can now run 5 kilometers in under 17 minutes without fail. No matter how spent they were from practice, they would gather as a group and clink glasses at least once every 10 days. All of them liked to drink, so it was an easy way to blow off steam. But we're a team of beginners, Kiyose went on. You might get nervous at your first race. I signed you up for a few track meets so you can get some practice. There's no need to stress over it. Just try to finish the run within 17 minutes. That's all. Prince, who was sitting next to Kakeru with his nose in a manga, leaned over and whispered, why is Haiji so hung up on 17 minutes? You need an official record of running 5,000 meters in less than 17 minutes to qualify for the Hakeone Ekiden prelim, Kakeru murmured back. Prince was clueless about the rules, apparently. You have to run in official races and track meets to get an authorized record. We've talked about this before. Have you forgotten already? The rim of Yuki's glasses flashed. I was like, yeah. He shot Prince a look as if to add, you don't have any trouble remembering manga titles. It looks like Haiji's focusing on just getting into the prelim, Yuki went on. Yeah, it looks like it, Kakeru nodded. Well, I won't argue that that's reasonable. Yuki took off his glasses listlessly and wiped the lenses with a pristine handkerchief. But what about you, Kakeru? Aren't you going to run in the ICs? Kakeru was silent. Prince asked, what's that? But Yuki walked off towards Nico, who sat in the corner twisting wire dolls. Prince still waited for an answer, open book in hand. It's short for intercollegiate. It's a track and field championship between universities, Kakeru replied. There's the Kanto IC in May and the national one in July. Why don't we all run there? Those are for top-tier student runners. You need an even better time than for Hakone prelim to be eligible. Huh. Prince turned back to the manga on his lap with a puzzled frown. But that's no problem for you, is it, Kakeru? Of course it wasn't. But Kakeru just gave a half-hearted laugh and let Prince's comment slide. Kiyose went around the room handing out a sheet of paper to everyone. It listed all the dates of various track meets organized by the universities. Kakeru dropped the paper on the floor as if it were too heavy. Forget about intercollegiate championships. He didn't even want to show up at those normal track meets. They would be swarming with students from universities with powerful teams. If he went, he'd be bound to run into his former teammates from senior high. He wasn't ready for that yet. Holding up the schedule, Kiyose explained, first there's the track meet organized by the Tokyo Taiku University. Then at the beginning of May, Dochido University. 2 weeks later, Kikui University. If those aren't enough, there's another Tokyo Taiku meet at the end of June. There's no rush. Just stay calm and break through the 17-minute wall. But the Dochido one's going to eat into Golden Week. We're supposed to be on holiday. Oh no! They're going to have to run on their spring break! And the last one's right in the middle of rainy season. I don't want to run in the rain. Joda and Joji were quick to complain, but they didn't really mean it. Practice had built up their confidence. Their eyes blazed with determination. We'll definitely break that record at the first race. One thing to note, if you want to aim for the intercollegiate race, you'll have to go full throttle from the first one at Totai. That's the latest you can get a record to qualify for the ICs, Kiyose said. It won't count towards the IC points, but as a track athlete, it's important. It's an important experience to participate in the ICs. What do you think, Kakeru? Kakeru sat in a daze. When Kiyose pressed, is anything wrong, Kakeru? He snapped out of it and looked up from the handout. No, it's nothing, he said. So what's an IC point? Joji piped up, and Kakeru was released from Kiyose's searching gaze. I didn't tell you before, but... Kiyose began, straightening up and raising his voice to make sure everyone could hear him. The competition at Hakone Ekiden prelim isn't just about the total time of all 10 members of each team. The others had been chatting among themselves, but now a hush fell over the room. Everyone turned to Kiyose with a puzzled, questioning look. There are 10 slots for the teams that make it through the prelim to the main Hakone race, Kiyose continued. But one of those teams is actually the select team. It's a system that saves the athletes who ran really well at the prelim but belong to teams that didn't make the cut. To put it bluntly, it's a scratch team. Which means in reality, only 9 teams can proceed to the Hakone Ekiden, Shindo asked. Exactly. And for the teams that place 7th or lower in the prelim, IC points will count towards their total time to decide their final ranking. It's super complicated, so I'll keep it simple. Basically, the teams that achieved good results from the IC championships get IC points. The better their results were at the ICs, the more they get subtracted from their total times at the prelims. Some teams have managed to cut down their total time by more than 5 minutes thanks to the IC points. Oh, okay. Hold on. Okay, we're going to let this conversation finish, but then I want to talk about this. So does that mean that even if you rank high in the prelim race itself, you might end up getting pushed out by the main Hakone race if another team climbs up the race with IC points? Joda asked. Yeah. The Hakone Ekiden airs on TV over New Year's, so it's good press for universities. That's why they often try to round up the best athletes, and all they care about is getting them to Hakone efficiently. The IC point system is also meant to deter those kinds of universities that only focus on Hakone. It's supposed to encourage them to regularly participate in track meets and cultivate athletes who can handle running on a track course, not just the Ekiden. It smells like greed, Nico said with a wry grin. IC money gets tangled up in everything, Shindo sighed, realizing just how important the group's promotional initiatives were. A slightly dampened mood descended over the room, but King blurted out, well then all right then, Haiji, Kakeru, you go run in the IC races and rack up them points. Not an option, Yuki dismissed ruthlessly. We're a tiny underdog team. They award IC points according to each team's ranking and how many people competed from that university. No matter how fast Haiji and Kakeru run at the ICs, it won't change a thing. Well, that's troubling. We don't have any money and we can't get points from the IC races. Well, what's left for us to do? Musa looked dejected. It's okay, Shindo pulled himself together to cheer Musa up. All we have to do is rank in the first 6 places at the prelim. That way we won't be affected by the IC points. We'll tackle the competition head on with nothing but our total time, just as an underdog team should. Well said, Shindo. Kiyose nodded, looking pleased. I thought getting our time down was our big problem right now, Yuki pointed out in a low voice. Okay, so before we go any further, that opens up a whole nother angle to this story, because now, like, the anime made it pretty, it seemed complicated enough in the anime, like you've got to get everybody under 17 minutes to be able to qualify for the qualifier, and the top 9 teams in the qualifier were able to go to Hakone. That was difficult enough. Now you've got on here this idea that not only do you have all that, but these other teams could be getting intercollegiate points to make up the difference and boost their team ahead from these other teams. And I get what they're talking about. They're talking about like some of the teams, that just focus on the Hakone race. They don't want them booting out the other universities that might have actual track and field athletes. But then it's also kind of a disadvantage because the track and field athletes can just rack up points to make up the difference if they have a sucky day at the prelim. So it's like, that just adds, and then they can't just rely on Kakeru and Kiyose because they say that's not going to be enough. So now it's like they have to make the top 6 at their prelim to get enough time to rack up enough points to do it. Oh my God. And then you have Kakeru, who has not told anybody about anything in his past. And Kyose's like, why don't you want to do intercollegiate points? Like, this adds a whole nother layer to this that was not in the anime. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah. And I need to go back. Anyway, we better run at those track meets and shorten our time step by step, said Nico, warping more wires into figurines. As for you two, Kakeru, Haiji, why not go run at the ICs and scare the shit out of them? Yeah, go grab those points, King said again. But King, we just said they can't get points by themselves, Joda retorted. Well, go in one ear and out the other, Joji grumbled. Still, Kakeru didn't open his mouth. He didn't have the presence of mind to respond to King right now. As he stared at the name Tokyo Taiku University on a sheet of paper, the thought struck him, didn't Sakaki go to Totai? The image of his high school teammate's face flashed in Kakeru's head, and gloom fell over him as he plunged straight into the rainy season. If he entered the Tokyo Taiku meet, he'd certainly have to face Sakaki. What would Sakaki do then? Now that he's in university with a strong track team, would I still be able to beat him? Under the pretense of going to the toilet, Kakeru slipped out of the twins' room, went downstairs, and slid open the front door. The gravel in the yard shone under the light of the stars. It felt as if something was inviting him toward the path of white light to the depths of his own heart. He almost broke out into a run, but he remembered he was wearing sandals and stopped. He heard Nira padding from under the Ingawa of the main house. Oh my god, I love that imagery of Kakeru about to go running, and then he's like, shit, I can't go running, I'm not wearing the right shoes. But that's like his instinct. His instinct is to run away. He just wants to run away from the problem, and he can't at the moment. Letting out a small breath, Kakeru started walking slowly towards the dog. Nira pressed his wet nose on Kakeru's toes. Kakeru crouched down and stroked the dog's warm coat. Suddenly, Nira's tail went wild. Kakeru heard footsteps crouching on the gravel behind him. Who knew it was without turning around? He knew who it was without turning around. Kiyose. Give me this moment of them together. Give me this book. Kiyose squatted next to Kakeru and tickled Nira between his ears. Nira huffed through his nose in delight. Kakeru waited for a while, but Kiyose didn't say a word. So Kakeru made the first move. The fact that Haiji was like, I'm going to wait for you to talk. I'm not going to push it. But I know something's on your mind. Do you really mean to enter me in the track meets and IC races? Kakeru asked. Of course. We're headed for the Hakone Ekiden after all. I bet it's going to get ugly. People will come at us. How come? Kiyose asked calmly, kneading the flabby bits around Nira's neck. Kakeru looked at Kiyose. You know, don't you, Haiji? You must have heard what I was like back in high school. That you were a really fast runner? That's the bright side. I'm talking about Kakeru. Kiyose cut him off. Listen, it's not your past or your reputation that's going to do the running. It's you who's going to run. Don't get distracted. Don't look back. Be stronger. Kiyose rose to his feet, straightening his knees with a little groan of pain. Kakeru and Nira looked up at him. The spring constellations glittered above them like a noble crown. Stronger? Kakeru asked. I believe in you, Kiyose smiled, and then strode back to the Chikusei-so. Kakeru mulled over Kyose's words, stroking Nira's back. Plenty of people before had told Kakeru to run faster, but no one had ever told him to become stronger. What did it mean to become stronger? Kakeru couldn't say, but Kiyose said he believed in him. A tiny flame flickered up inside Kakeru, where he had been frozen over for a long time. The flame curbed the torrent of violence always seething inside of him, and kept at bay the voice that tried to lure him into a dark place. Kyose's words were charged with a quiet power that seemed to blow away Kakeru's fears and anxieties. Right, he murmured, rising to his feet. He was never good at sweating the small stuff anyway, so he might as well just run. Even if he had to face someone unpleasant, even if they made him feel miserable, all he had to do was shrug them off and keep running. Running was all he could do. You shut up right now, Story, talking about how Haiji's words are a flame that curbs the violence inside of Kakeru and keeps his anxieties away. You shut up right now! They are boyfriends, and this is amazing! Just, Kakeru bid Nira good night. Kakeru wasn't so scared or reluctant to run at a track meet anymore. In fact, he was even starting to look forward to putting his running to the test. As the day... Okay, so real quick, I do appreciate, like, this series letting him and Haiji, like, them motivate each other. And I do appreciate that Kakeru, he questions Haiji, but he doesn't doubt him, and he considers what he does with, like, all seriousness. I can definitely see why the anime wanted to make Kakeru more edgy and angsty, because the book so far has not shown Kakeru be fully mad and and like going towards his violent state. But also, we haven't seen Sakaki, and we haven't had that experience yet. That may still happen in the novel, but I can see why the anime made him edgier and more angsty, but this is just... Oh. Okay. As the day of the track meet at Tokyo Taiku approached, Kakeru's excitement grew. It was his first real battle in a long time. He was confident that his practice up until now had been thorough and comprehensive. Even so, thoughts raced around his head every night before he fell asleep. What if seeing an old teammate shakes me up so bad I can't concentrate on the race? What if my runner's instinct has gotten rusty and I put on a spurt at the wrong time? My results turned heads in high school's track world, but can I really compete at the university level? When he closed his eyes, he was flooded with worries, and he flung aside his duvet to sit up. Desperately trying to resist the urge to dash out of the house and start jogging, he sat all alone in the midnight darkness, telling himself to calm down. Don't think about anything. Just visualize the race. All you have to do is run. Feel the movement of every muscle in your body and keep pushing forward. As soon as he remembered the familiar rush of running in a race, the heat of the moment, his hesitation faded away, and he was impatient to get out there as Nero was to go for a walk. Alongside the training, Kakeru never skipped a lecture. It was Kyosei's theory that someone who couldn't earn their course credits had no chance of achieving good results in running. When it came to get-togethers or drinking parties, Kakeru kept turning them down because he had to practice. The other Chikusei-so residents were pumped up for the track meets too. They came straight home after classes and jumped right into their workouts. Soon, word spread around, not only among the townspeople at the shopping arcade, but also on campus, that a bunch of guys living in that ramshackle apartment were serious about running. The days before the Tokyo Taiku track meet, Kakeru asked a friend from his foreign language class to answer the roll call for him in a few different classes. What you up to, Kakeru? Are you skipping tomorrow? I'm going to a track meet. Oh yeah, aren't you running a marathon? Well, it's not exactly a marathon. Kakeru almost explained it was a Hakone Ekiden that they were aiming for, and tomorrow they were going to run 5,000-meter track races, but he thought the better of it. Once he came to Kansai, for the first time in his life, Kakeru realized that for people who had nothing to do with track, there wasn't much difference between a marathon and an Ekiden relay race. When they talked about track events, they laughed off in disbelief. You really run 5 kilometers, like round and round the track? It didn't make sense to them. In their eyes, it was like a bizarre ritual of dubious origin. The reality had come as a shock to Kakeru. Track's a really important part of my life, but for most people, it's barely a blip on their radar. At the same time, he also found it amusing. Runners like him were sweating every day, pushing themselves to the limits, in an endeavor that didn't mean much to most of the population. God, that's so relatable. Oh my God. Also, I love the fact that people around campus are starting to know what they're trying to do, and that they're actually working hard, and the team's like trying to get ready for it. That's really great. But the fact that Kakeru is looking forward to the race, like he wants to test himself, but all of Kakeru's anxieties are instantly relatable. Like, I get that. I absolutely understand where he's coming from. But not only that, I have been in so many different realms that are kind of like track running, and I'm sure you all have been as well. Like, my family growing up, we were on a farm, so I showed livestock, which nobody that I work with knows what showing livestock is. And I'm like, okay, well, you know the Westminster Dog Show that you see on TV where everybody's showing little dogs? It's like that, but with cows. That's how I explained it to everybody. And so I would do that growing up. And I've actually gone to a dog show and shown, like, my dog Gypsy before there. She was before these two goons. But I've done that, and that's a whole different world. And then I coach, competitive public speaking, and nobody understands what that is unless you do it. But in each of those worlds, you embed yourself in that world, and you get so caught up in it, and it's so personal to you, and it's part of your identity and who you are, that it does feel so weird when you just explain something to people and they don't know what you're talking about. Like, growing up showing cows, my friend, her boyfriend would come to a show and be like, I don't get it. And we're like, no, it's this, this, and this. And they're like, I just don't understand. And so it can be really hard if you're not like ingrained in it to know what it is or to care about it. So everything Kakeru is saying here is, it's so relatable, right? It's so relatable. All right. But anyway, so when his classmate asked him about the marathon, Kakeru just gave a non-committal laugh and replied, yeah, well, it's kind of like a short version of a marathon. Can I count on you then? Oh, sure. Good thing. Good luck. His classmate said earnestly, and Kakeru could tell that even though his friend didn't quite understand what it was about, he was cheering Kakeru on for real. That night, Kakeru lay still in the shallow sleep. It was the kind of sleep that stretched taut, sharpened to a point. This is good, Kakeru thought as he drifted in and out of consciousness. He felt every excess piece of him getting stripped away, transforming his body and soul overnight into a creature made for running. He tricked himself into thinking he'd forgotten it, but he still had the fight inside of him, the blazing fire before a race. Ah, yeah! Okay, now I want to go... Yep, here we go. The Chikuseiso residents crammed into the white van to go to the Tokyo Taiku University. Oh, is Haiji going to drive them? Are we going to find that out? You got everything you need? Uniform, shoes, change of clothes, wristwatches? All good. They hardly had any space to move inside the van, but they held up their bags to show Kyosei. By the way, who's driving? Nico asked. Me. Kyosei got in the driver's seat and buckled up. Yuki sat next to him, spreading out a map to do the final check on the route. What about the coach? Kakeru asked. He'd never heard of a coach who didn't accompany their team to the track meets, not to mention their regular practice. Oh, he went to the Go parlor. Kyosei said. An uproar broke out. But he's the coach. Isn't he supposed to coach us? Well, can we even call him a coach? I've been wondering, what's a Go parlor? Musa asked Shindo. As Shindo started explaining, King said, well, who could have guessed our landlord had a hobby like that? You didn't know? But you've been at Aotake for years, Jojei said breezily. Never had much contact with him until we started running, Nico said. He was just the old guy that lives next door, pretty much. He doesn't have to be here. Kyosei carefully put the van into drive and stepped on the gas. It's not like the coach is the one who's running. The van zoomed off out of the yard, and Nero watched them go, wagging his tail. As soon as they were off, Kakeru realized why the landlord had stayed away. Kyosei's driving was problematic, to say the least. The van kept straying too close to the other lane, and there was an awkward jolt at every red light. Is this your first time on the road since getting your license, Haiji? Kakeru asked. His head slammed against the window when they turned a corner. Keep left! Keep left! Joda cried out. Can you all be quiet? Yuki snapped, his face white. Sitting in the passenger seat put his life most at risk. Nico dropped a live grenade. Well, don't they say men who are bad at driving aren't so great down there either? Isn't that a myth? I think they've got the point, though. Joda chimed in. They blurted out whatever came to their heads. Where's down there? Musa asked Shindo. Never mind, just shut up! Yuki shouted. Kyosei didn't even seem to hear the chatter behind him. He was gripping the steering wheel for dear life, his whole attention riveted on the road. Kakeru noticed Prince was leaning on his shoulder. Prince, are you okay? I'm sick. Throwing up. Hold on a second! The van plunged into chaos. Jodo thrust out a plastic bag and held it in front of Prince's mouth as Joji frantically fanned Prince with his hands. So much for concentrating before the race. Kakeru sighed and rolled down the window for Prince. At last, they made it to Totai in one piece. The university campus was on an expansive tract of land on the outskirts of Tokyo, equipped with a well-maintained sports field. The group looked around in awe. Totai wasn't a sports science college for nothing. They registered at the reception area and received their numbered race bibs. Oh my god. Oh my god. I love it. So, okay, now, by Nico's standard, he says that if you're a bad driver, you're bad in bed. Well, maybe that's just because Haiji's not a top. I mean... All right. Joji noticed something on his bib. Kakeru, there's a thing on the back like a chip or something. What is that? That's how they get your time. It automatically records it when you pass over the finish line. Wow, I thought that they would use a stopwatch. I think it's mostly automatic in big track meets and competitions. There's a lot of people in the race too. When they passed through the gate and got up on the stands, the women's short distance race was underway on the track in front of them, and the long jump was taking place inside the track. Totai's cheer squad was chanting up from the bleachers. Huh. I thought there'd be an opening and closing ceremonies that we'd all have to attend, Yuki remarked. Is everyone allowed to show up whenever? Well, we're here for a race, not a field day, Kyosei laughed. We're meant to arrive in time for the event we're competing in, so that we're in tip-top shape for our race. I like that there's a bunch of other events going on at the same time. That's actually pretty cool, and they just show up for their part. They set themselves up in one other corner of the stands and changed into their uniforms with the bibs attached. The uniform for the Kansai University Track and Field Club was a black shirt and black shorts with a silver line going down the side. The name of their college was blazoned across their chests in silver. It was the group's first time wearing the uniforms. This looks cool, Joda said, inspecting the design with pride. What if girls start fangirling over us? We better be ready, Joji said cheerily, immediately stripping down and pulling on his new shirt. I see lots of girls from other colleges cheering from the stands. Let's run like crazy, Joji. Kakeru thought of the Yaokatsu girl, but decided not to tell the twins about her for the time being. Yeah, don't distract them even more, right? Once you get changed, go warm up. The race starts at 2:30. Make sure you're back here by 2, Kiyose said. The group dispersed and started jogging. Kakeru ran around the sports ground with Kiyose. The Totai campus seemed to have everything you'd need for playing sports. Even just in their immediate surroundings, Kakeru could see 3 buildings that looked like gymnasiums. So this is like the big sports college that he could have gone to. Okay. If I'd stayed on the track team in high school, I might have gotten a referral for one of these colleges, Kakeru thought. But which path would have been better? I'll have to find the answer through running. Bathroom break, Kiyose said, swerving into the men's room at the edge of the playing field. Athletes couldn't help getting nervous before a race, and they would dash to the toilet multiple times. Kakeru had also gone a few times since they arrived, so he kept right on jogging. Kakeru thought about the twins. It's their first race ever, but they were still bantering as usual. I wonder if reality hasn't hit them yet. Maybe they don't know how nerve-wracking a race can be. Someone called out, Kurihara! Kakeru turned around to see a first year in the Totai uniform, sitting near the path on the lawn. He seemed to be in the middle of stretches. It was Kosuke Sakaki, who had been on the track team at Sendai Josai Senior High the same year as Kakeru. I knew it, Kakeru thought. He didn't want to see Sakaki. He made a wide U-turn and stopped in front of his old teammate, but he still went over there. I didn't expect to see you here of all places. Sakaki got to his feet, eyeballing Kakeru. I didn't even think you were still doing track. It's the only thing I'm good at, Kakeru replied. A vein on Sakaki's temple throbbed. You haven't changed at all, have you? After all the mess you put us through. Sakaki was short, and Kakeru stared at the top of his head. Oh, Kakeru noticed 2 whorls in his hair, but he kept his mouth shut. Sakaki scoffed when he saw the name of the university on Kakeru's uniform. Does Kansai even have a track team? Obviously, we're here, aren't we? Blood rushed to Kakeru's head. He couldn't stand being taunted by a guy who was slower than him. Yeah, I'm the track team, he declared boldly. Oh! The moment Sakaki shrank slightly at the quiet force in Kakeru's voice, Kiyose came back from the toilet. Kakeru, what are you doing? Yes, don't slack off on your warm-up. I'm sorry, Kakeru apologized right away, like a docile dog. Ooh, the I'm the track team line. That sounds more like anime, Kakeru. Kiyose held him tight by the scruff of his neck and by his stomach, just as he did the other members of Chiguse so. As he slipped away, Sakaki whispered to Kakeru, have fun running those playground races with your weak-ass twins. It suits you. Hey, hang on! Kakeru moved to chase him, but Kiyose grabbed him by the hem of his uniform. You've got a shorter fuse than you look. Kakeru smoothed his shirt. I'm sorry. Listen, Kakeru. Kiyose grinned so widely that he looked almost menacing. There's an old saying that goes, what goes around in Edo comes around in Nagasaki. Insulted on the playground, take revenge on the track. What does that mean? It means you never, ever forget an insult, and you pay them back in the race. Is he actually fuming right now? Kakeru shuddered. He tried to think that this was the thrill before battle that was making him tremble. When they finished their warm-up and returned to the stands, the team gathered around Kiyose. Casting his eyes over them, he barked, all right, it's time. Run with everything you've got. Yeah, everyone roared, unusually in unison. Let's show the college track world who we are, and that we are the Kansai University track team, Kiyose declared. So he was listening to what I said after all. For the 3rd time, Kakeru said to him, I'm sorry. It's fine as long as you get it, said Kiyose. Just remember you're not alone. That we are the university track team. Oh, man. So, yeah, I was going to say, like, Kakeru saying that he was the university track team. I was like, ooh, that felt very much like anime Kakeru getting a little cocky and being like, he's the only one that can run. But Kiyose's like, no, you're not the only one on this team. We are the team. I'm like, oh my gosh. In more ways than one, the Kansai team made sure that everybody knew who they were by the end of the track meet. Kakeru's time came close to his personal best record in high school, 14 minutes and 9 seconds for the 5,000 meters. Needless to say, he was the fastest among the first years at the race. Even compared with the older students, he managed to rank third in the entire group, an impressive feat. A student from the administrative committee brought over simple podium and placed it on the side of the track. When Kakeru went up and received a certificate bearing his time, he felt a rush of excitement. Ever since he had left the track team in senior high, he'd been running by himself, and now he felt like he got a tangible answer that the time he'd spent alone wasn't for nothing, and that he'd been doing the right thing. You're Kakeru Kurihara, aren't you? You went to Sendai Josai Senior High. Kakeru looked up. A runner from Rakudo University was staring at him from the place at the top of the podium. He had a perfectly smooth-shaved head. Kakeru wondered whether it was a Buddhist college thing and a rough stubble darkening his hollow cheeks. These features, coupled with his body, which seemed whittled into a refined, lithe figure, gave him the impression of a Buddhist monk who devoted himself to the rigorous training for spiritual enlightenment. I'd heard rumors about a fast runner. So you're at Kansai now. Keep up the good work. I don't need you to tell me that, Kakeru wanted to retort. But the guy was clearly an upperclassman, so Kakeru just nodded and said, I will. Oh, is this Fujiwara? It looks like Kyosei's recovering too. The Rakudo runner looked towards the stands, where Kyosei was watching Kakeru on the podium. The twins were next to Kyosei, trying to snap some pictures of Kakeru with their cell phones. We probably look like blurry dots at this distance, Kakeru thought. Do you know Haiji? Kakeru said. Oh, on a first-name basis, you know. I know him well, and I know that his run today is nothing compared to what he can do when he's on top of his game. The Rakudo runner answered. Keep an eye out for him. You're all set on going to Hakone, aren't you? The man stepped down from the podium, straightened his back, and walked away. A group of Rakudo students in purple uniforms were waiting for him by the gate, and they greeted him in unison with a bow, cheering, Congratulations, you did it! You'd think he'd just gotten out of prison or something. Kakeru grumbled under his breath. Whoever he is, he's got a big mouth. Oh my gosh! Oh my Kakeru! That is literally Kyosei's ex. That is his bestie, Fujiwara. Oh my god. I'm realizing slowly that Kakeru is slightly an unreliable narrator because he makes it seem like he's very reverent and very mindful and demure. But then when he gets up there, he like runs his mouth and is just kind of cocky. And you're like, Kakeru, what are you doing? And so, yeah, so that's clearly, I am interested in the fact that Fujiwara is like, or Fujioka. Is it Fujioka or Fujiwara? We'll find out in a minute. But in the anime, he has like hair. And here he's bald. I guess they wanted to make him look more attractive in the anime. And making him bald was too much. But anyway, oh my god. Kyosei's time was 14 minutes 21 seconds. This was much faster than his run on the first day of practice. But, like the Rakudo guy, Kakeru also sensed that Kyosei's knee wasn't fully healed. He might be wearing himself out. Even though he advised Kakeru not to run too much, when it came to his own training, Kyosei seemed to push himself beyond his limits. When Kakeru returned to the bleachers, the Chikusei-so members showered him with praise. All of them had shown they had enough backbone. Though this was only their first-time race, most of them already achieved their goal of under 17 minutes. Oh! Musa in particular put up a strong fight and made it in under 15 minutes. The twins and Yuki came around 15 minutes and 30 seconds, while Shindo and Nico finished in 16 minutes and 30 seconds. That means that 8 of the 10 members were eligible to enter the Hakone Ekiden prelim. King came very close, but he went just over 17 minutes. He wasn't one to respond well to pressure. Perhaps weighed down by the result, he was a little quiet. But if all went well, he would surely make it in under 17 minutes at the next track meet. The problem was Prince. He got dangerously close to dropping out of the race altogether. He was lagging behind so much that the referee mistook his slowness as a sign of dehydration and nearly stopped him. When the crowd and other athletes realized what was happening, they were astonished. He's not even sick? He's seriously running as hard as he can? Is he really a track athlete? Which team is he on? Apparently he's with Kansai. As the spectators talked among themselves, Prince plodded on. When he finally crossed the finish line at 22 minutes, the last one by a wide margin, the crowd erupted in a big round of applause. All press is good press, Yuki said with a shrug. We really made a splash. Now look, Prince was at 33 minutes or 31 minutes at the start, so that he's cut it down a bit. A bit. Prince collapsed as soon as he crossed the line and was carried up to the stands by Shindo Musa. Even now, after the award ceremony, he still lay limp on the bench. When they were ready to go home, Kiyose patted Kakeru on the shoulder and said, "Nice job. I saw that first-year brat from Totai sneaking out of here. It serves him right." Kakeru had been so absorbed in the run that he'd forgotten all about Sakaki. Haiji's pretty grudgy. He realized, a little taken aback. Oh, I love Haiji being like, me? Hold a grudge? What? All right. Okay. The Rakudo guy who came first started talking to me back there. He sounded like he knew you, Haiji. Fujioka, that's right. Yeah, Kiyose nodded. He was my teammate in high school, Kazuma Fujioka. He's a fourth year at Rakudo now, the team captain. Rakudo rules over Hakone Ekiden. He's been the leader behind their win at Hakone 3 years in a row. And they look like they're well prepared to extend that record with a fourth consecutive win. I didn't know he was such a big deal. Is he that famous? You're probably the only one in the track world who doesn't know Fujioka, Kiyose laughed. You always zero in so much on your own run. You don't pay attention to what's going on around you. That kind of self-discipline can be a good thing, but remember, it's worth observing other runners who are doing good work too. Of course, Kakeru was watching the way Fujioka ran during the race. His sharp, streamlined form admitting no excess. His astute mind reading the turns of the race with precision. He had steadily accelerated over the last 2 laps of the race, shortening the distance between himself and the one runner ahead of him. The runner in the lead was a black international student named Manas from the invincible Basso University, known as the Ekiden Empire. Fujioka overtook Manas right before the finish line to win first place. Fujioka's time was 13 minutes 51 seconds. His speed and stamina were astounding. Much to his chagrin, Kakeru didn't have the strength needed to keep up with the battle between Fujioka and Manas near the end of the race. His ability and experience were nowhere near enough. I still have a long way to go, Kakeru thought. I have to run harder. He wanted to get as lean as humanly possible, grow a supple yet powerful spring in his step, and run like the wind. He wanted to run so tirelessly that people would wonder whether the air around him was denser with oxygen. The thrill he had felt on the podium vanished in an instant, replaced by a restless hunger. He longed to run faster, much faster, to attain new heights so that no one had ever experienced before. On their drive back, Prince finally regained enough strength to speak. You know, athletes might look nice and honest, but they actually play dirty. They were elbowing me and pushing my back as soon as the race started. Good thing you had spent so much space on the track at the end. Good thing you had so much space on the track at the end, Nico teased. Sure, but still, Prince mumbled, pouting. Can you believe what this guy from Todai said when he passed me? He said, "Get out of the way, you slug." Oh, it's pissing me off. Sportsmanship is a myth. It's true you were sluggish, so what do you expect? Kakeru wanted to snap back. He couldn't find anything funny in their usual playful banter. Now that he'd witnessed Fujioka's formidable power, he couldn't help but feel that his teammates were too laid back. Oh, here we go. This is where Kakeru's competitive cockiness comes in. At this rate, it seemed doubtful that all 10 of them could pull off the 5,000-meter run in less than 17 minutes. Should they really be cracking jokes even when their place in the prelim was in jeopardy? That phrase Sakaki had hurled at him, playground races, spun around and around in his head. A tiny team of 10 people and a bunch of amateurs at that, running the Hakone Ekiden, it was never going to happen. Why couldn't I keep my anger under control back in high school? I should have stayed out of trouble and gotten a referral for a college with a strong track team. Then I could have trained with runners at a high level, with better facilities and everything. Fear gripped Kakeru. He felt he was getting left further and further behind by the world of speed while he was chasing after a pipe dream of the Chikuseiso residents. Kakeru sat brooding in silence as the rest of the group chattered on, unwinding after their first track meet. He didn't even realize that Kiyose was observing him in the rearview mirror from the driver's seat. Oh my gosh! Oh! Oh, that line, that's so good. Yes. So yeah, we're getting Kakeru from the anime being restless and believing like he's thinking that he deserves better and he should have gone to Shiratorizawa, and he's like envious of Fujioka, but it's like Fujioka's a fourth year. And so is the Manas guy. Like, they're both fourth years. Like, Kakeru, you're a first year. Like, you're 3 years behind them. And it's like, you can't run harder to catch up with them. That experience they have, you can't match that. You just have to keep working to get up there. Oh my gosh. And it does make me mad that he gets he should be sitting there supporting his teammates, not getting on with Sakaki and making fun of them and not treating them seriously. But oh my gosh. And Kyose's watching all of it. Oh my gosh. Oh, in this book, Kyose's gonna rip him a new one. You know it's gonna happen. Oh my god. Once he started slipping, Kakeru struggled to get upright again. Here we go. All right. His impatience clouded his judgment. He couldn't take a step back to assess his own condition. No matter how hard he practiced, he still felt it wasn't enough. He ran and ran and ran, but he couldn't feel himself getting any faster. He wasn't cutting down his running times as much as he wanted to. He made sure he got enough nutrients from supplements and was running more than ever. So why aren't I getting the results? His efforts only inflamed his frustration. But still, he couldn't stop running. The thought of spiraling down even more kept him on the move, too scared to rest. Kakeru ran until the sky turned completely black, long after the group practice, like a fish that would suffocate if it didn't keep swimming, or a bird of passage that would plummet into the sea if it didn't keep beating its wings. Kakeru continued to run as if he were possessed. At first the others had looked on in awe, but soon they began to sense something abnormal in Kakeru's brutal training. They started calling out to him to go home with them. "Let's call it a day, Kakeru," Joji said anxiously. "Oh, we're having tonkatsu tonight for dinner. Haiji went back ahead, and so we'll have freshly fried pork waiting for us. Let's go home while it's still sizzling." Kakeru answered in monosyllables. "Just a bit more." He shot off across the field into the gathering gloom, his eyes glinting like a demon's spirit. Kyosei didn't say anything in particular to him. Sometimes he warned Kakeru, "You're running too much, be careful." But the rest of the time, he stood back and watched without interfering. That irked Kakeru too. When Kyosei suggested that he cut down on training, Kakeru felt Kyosei wasn't being serious enough. And it only fanned Kakeru's discontent that Kyosei didn't teach him exactly what he was supposed to do instead of running in order to become faster. Despite feverishly pushing himself beyond his limits, Kakeru's time wasn't improving. In fact, it was getting worse. At the Kanto Intercollegiate Championship, he could only run about as fast as Kyosei, who was still nursing an injury. It wasn't an especially bad record, but for an athlete competing in an IC race, Kakeru had to call it mediocre. And they were already in the rainy season. One night, when Kakeru came back from jogging in the rain, Kyosei called him from the kitchen. Kyosei was sitting at the table devising the next training schedule. The others had retired to their rooms and the house was quiet. Tousling his drenched hair with a towel, Kakeru sat down obediently across from Kyosei. "Let's call off the national IC. Both you and me," said Kyosei. Kakeru was caught off guard. "Why should we? I want to run," he protested fiercely. "You know you're not in good shape. Maybe you're a bit anemic from the intense training. You shouldn't strain yourself too much." "But I'm not recovering from an injury like you are, Haiji. As long as I keep running, I'll get my rhythm back soon enough." "I'm not so sure." Kyosei tilted his head, still surveying the training log. "I think it's useless for you to keep running in your current condition. You're not seeing yourself clearly enough. All you think about is how you compare with others and things like that. When you're in that kind of headspace, competing in the IC will only backfire." "This is going nowhere," Kakeru slammed his fist on the table. "You do realize there's someone on the team who hasn't passed the 17-minute wall. It's not even clear whether we can qualify for the prelim. Are you telling me not to run? And you're telling me not to run the IC race. Where else am I supposed to set new records then? Are you going to make me waste the whole year keeping up pace with you people?" "Are you only running to set records?" Kyosei threw down the papers. A hint of frustration and anger flickered in his eyes as he looked straight at Kakeru. "If that's it, You're the same as those micromanaging coaches who push their athletes into running until their legs fall off. That's exactly the kind of thinking that you hated and fought against. That's not true, Kakeru shouted. He didn't want to be put in the same box as his high school coach. But he couldn't exactly articulate how he was any different. Kakeru did regard his teammates, the members who weren't getting any faster, as a burden. And a part of him mocked them as pathetic losers. Kakeru desperately searched for the right words to make Kyosei understand. Well, there's no way we can get faster if we're just running together like some cozy club. Running for a track team at a university level and aiming for Hakone are a whole different story from running as a hobby. We're not here to play games. We're competing in a serious race. Of course, no one at Aotake is playing games. I certainly don't see us working towards Hakone Ekiden as a hobby or just for the hell of it. Kyosei parried with his usual composure. Kakeru, what's making you so restless? I'm not. What's going on? This is the scene in the anime. What's going on? Prince popped his head in the kitchen doorway. He looked from one to the other, sensing the tension between them. Fighting? It's nothing, said Kakeru, getting up from his seat. You're still up? Do you want a drink or something? Kyosei said with a smile. Yeah, I got a bit thirsty, French. Prince opened the fridge, though he was still peering anxiously at them. As Kakeru was leaving the room, Kyosei called after him. About the IC race. Senior's orders. Is that clear? Yes, Kakeru answered. He crossed the hallway to his room and slammed the door shut. Even when he lay down on the futon, sleep was slow to come. Tonight, as on other nights, a faint smell of rain seeped in through the thin window pane. At their third track meet, King managed to get his time to under 17 minutes. Prince was the only one who hadn't. Under pressure, he was putting all his effort into practice, but in Kakeru's eyes, even that was a little too far. Why is he up so late anyway? Kakeru glared at the ceiling. Prince should have been keeping a regular routine more than anyone else, and it was on him to get up early tomorrow to run hard. I bet he's reading manga again. Kyosei and Prince were talking in the kitchen, but after a while he heard them going back to their rooms. Prince's footsteps creaked overhead. Since it was an old house and a cheap house, everyone could hear everyone else going on about their daily lives. It sounded like Prince was rummaging around in his hoard of treasure for a particular volume. Kakeru heard an avalanche of books tumbling down to the floor. Put away your manga and go to sleep already. Kakeru jerked the thin blanket over himself, curled up in a ball, and willed Prince to go to bed. Presently, a whirring sound resembling a rickety windmill began to thrum in the air. Prince was jogging on his treadmill again, manga in hand. The noise kept Kakeru awake. He tossed aside the blanket, grabbed a pin lying near the futon, and flung it at the ceiling. Such a small sound was lost on Prince. He kept on running on the treadmill. It seemed like he would go on forever. In his own way, Prince was working hard. Though he hated running and constantly complained in the beginning, now he was willingly jogging by himself in the middle of the night without anyone telling him to. All so that the Chikusei-so team could enter the prelim and the Hakone Ekiden. But Kakeru just couldn't bring himself to acknowledge Prince's efforts. To Kakeru, hard work that didn't produce any results was worthless. Kakeru couldn't figure out whether he wanted to rage, cry, or laugh. He tugged the blanket over himself again and squeezed his eyes shut. Even when he pressed his hands over his ears, the creaking whir of the treadmill rained down on him relentlessly from the room above. Oh my gosh. I as a coach, I see people that are like Kakeru on teams, and we've had students that are like Kakeru on teams, and it's like your personal victory is important and working for yourself is important too, but also recognizing your teammates and how hard they're working is also important. So, okay. At the second Totai track meet at the end of June, Prince achieved the time of 16 minutes and 58 seconds. He had finally cleared the 17-minute hurdle. Now, every member of the Chikyuseiso team was qualified to compete in the Hakone Ekiden prelim. After the race, they were on cloud 9. They whooped and gave each other high fives, then whirled around in a circle holding hands. They kept spinning like they were performing a ritual to summon a UFO until Prince sank to the ground exhausted. Kakeru stood to one side, gazing at his teammates from a little distance. Of course, he was happy and relieved to have a ticket to the prelim, but he thought it was too early to celebrate. Runners from the other universities whispered to one another as they eyed the Chikyuseiso team going wild. So they made it to the prelim, not bad. But just look at them, they're never going to go further than that. At least they'll have a nice memory to look back on, huh? They were snickering. It was the kind of laughter that was loaded with different undertones. Kakeru could sense them. Sakaki from Totai spotted Kakeru standing apart from the circle and approached him. Hey, I heard your lame little group's trying to get into Hakone. Try not to embarrass yourself at the prelim. What an asshole! Kakeru glowered at him. He wanted to bite back, but no words came. Kakeru. And then Kyosei shows up, right? Kyosei called over to him, waving his hand. Kakeru left Sakaki and went closer to the group. You've put up a good fight, guys. Kyosei commended them calmly. We're one step closer to the Hakone. From now on, we'll focus on stretching at our distances at practice. But tonight, let's celebrate. Gather in the twins' room after you finish your evening jogs. Yes, the twins cheered. Kakeru hid his icy response underneath a smile. Another drinking party? We have those all the time. In his head, Kakeru went through their best official records so far. Kakeru, 14 minutes, 9 seconds. Haiji, 14 minutes, 20 seconds. Musa, 14 minutes, 49 seconds. Joji, 15.3. Joda, 15.4. Yuki, 15.36. Shindo, 15.39. Nico, 15.59. King, 16.03. Prince, 16.58. Most of them still weren't fast enough to compete with frontline runners. They were far below the threshold that they had to meet if they were going to have any hope of progressing beyond the prelim. That was the reality. Now that the road to the prelim was clear, Kakeru grew more agitated than ever. When he was drinking with the group in the twins' room that night, the sake tasted bland. He sat alone by the window, feeling out of tune with the others' excitement. The group had nearly finished the feast that Kyosei had whipped up when they started to praise Prince one after the other. I can see this is going to get bad. I was worried till the end, but you pulled through, Prince, said King. Your last spurt today, that was something. You crossed the line right in time, Shindo remarked. Yes, watching your brave deed made me a little teary, Prince, Musa joined in. As a prize for his achievement, the twins presented Prince with a pre-release volume of the weekly manga magazine, which they had procured at the shopping arcade especially for the occasion. Prince forgot all about the sake and was already poring over the book. Nico and Yuki were laughing at Prince's reaction. Kakeru couldn't stand it. Is it really worth raving about? He muttered irritably. Eyes flew to him in surprise. He couldn't back down now, so he went on. Prince's time is nothing to be proud of. Without looking up from the magazine, Prince nodded in agreement. Well, yeah, I can't argue with that. What do you mean, Kakeru? Joda fumed. Even Joji, who was always sunny, firmly disagreed with Kakeru. Well, don't you see, Prince got so much faster in just 3 months. At this rate, by the time we get to the prelim, he's going to whiz by 5 kilometers in a flash. That's unrealistic, Yuki jabbed. Kakeru ignored them and turned to Prince. Do you realize what kind of position we're in? This is no time to be reading manga. You're absolutely right, Prince replied, shrugging him off. But the twins leapt to their feet in outrage. Stop it, Kakeru. You've been acting weird lately, and you're kind of scary. Yeah, don't take it out on Prince. If you've got something to say, then say it to all of us. Well, then fine, I'll say it. Kakeru thrust down his cup and stood up. Keep running like sloths and we'll never get to Hakone. Never. But look at you throwing a drinking party like everything's all good. How can you be so laid back? I don't get it. Calm down, Kakeru. You've been drinking with us too, Shindo said, clutching Kakeru's ankle. You're drunk, aren't you? Just sit down for a minute. As for the twins, Musa was holding his arms up around them, trying to soothe them. Kakeru and the twins, the 3 first years, were ready to pounce on each other, almost tearing themselves out of the other students' clasp. Who do you think you are, just because you can run a little faster than us? You're the one who told me to say it, Kakeru retorted. Well, you've crossed the line. It's not like everyone can just get up and start running like you do. Well, wait till you put more practice in before you start talking like that, but who knows? Maybe no amount of practice can save you. Kakeru, that's going too far, Nico cut in, rising him halfway to his feet. You jerk, you think you're all that? King was about to lunge at Kakeru, but he was a split second too late. Kyosei, who had been sitting in silence, shot up and grabbed Kakeru by his collar, as agile and ferocious as a leopard. "You doofus." The others had no time to react. "When are you going to wake up? Why can't you recognize that every one of us, including Prince, is putting everything into this? Why are you downplaying their commitment? Because they're slower than you? Is speed the only thing that matters to you? Then there's no point in running. Just go on a bullet train. Take a flight. That's a lot faster." Haiji. Stunned by Kyose's fury, the whole room froze. "You should see it by now, Kakeru. It's meaningless to chase after speed and nothing else. Nothing comes of it. Look at what happened to me. Someday you'll hit your limit and..." He broke off mid-sentence. His grip on Kakeru's shirt loosened, and he staggered back. "Oh, Haiji!" Kakeru darted forward to hold him. "What's wrong?" Kyosei turned pale, and his eyelids drooped. "Hey, Haiji, wake up!" Kakeru slapped his cheeks, but he showed no response. "What do we do? He's unconscious." "What?" Panic broke out. Yuki seized Kyosei's wrist and checked his pulse. "Twins, get the futon out. Someone call an ambulance." "No, it'll be quicker to call a doctor. Tell the landlord and ask for a doctor right now." "Oh, don't die, Haiji!" Joda and Joji sobbed as they pulled out the futon. Shindo and Musa ran to the window and shouted to the main house, "Mr. Tazaki, we need help." Prince scrambled downstairs to get some water, and King just scurried forward to and fro like a headless chicken. Kakeru and Nico set Kyosei down on the futon. Even when Yuki told him, "Don't worry so much, he'll be fine," Kakeru stayed put near Kyosei's head. He didn't budge until the neighborhood doctor arrived. It was well past his consultation hours, but he was an elderly physician who knew the landlord well. He hurried over straight away after Tazaki's call. The doctor plowed through the group and gathered around Kyosei and began his examination. He checked Kyosei's condition by lifting his eyelids, pressing a stethoscope against his chest, feeling for any sign of fever, and so on. Finally, he looked around the group and uttered a single word. "Fatigue," he said. It seemed he fainted from anemia, but now he's actually asleep. "He's sleeping." Everyone peered at Kyosei. He was indeed breathing regularly, his chest rising and falling peacefully. Though they were relieved that it wasn't anything serious, they felt somewhat ridiculous for all the commotion that they'd caused. Extreme fatigue from lack of sleep, I would say. The doctor rummaged in his bag and swiftly prepared a syringe. "A nutrient injection is in order. Let him rest here for tonight. If anything happens, you're welcome to call me again." "Well, take care. Try to keep him from working too hard." The group thanked the doctor, and Yuki and Shindo saw him off to the front door. Kyosei remained fast asleep even when the needle of the syringe pierced his skin. The twins tucked him in under a thin blanket. "It's my fault. I made him worry about me." Kakeru hung his head and watched over Kyosei's sleeping face. He felt ashamed, frustrated at himself for not picking up on the signs. Even Fujioka from Rakudo had discerned that Kyosei wasn't in good shape. Kakeru had been so absorbed in his own running that he couldn't even see what was happening to someone who lived under the same roof. Prince, sitting across from Kakeru on the other side of the futon, shook his head feebly. "That's not true. It's my fault. Even after all this time, I can't run any faster." Everyone sat on the futon in mournful silence, like the forest animals that had gathered around the recumbent body of Buddha after he had died and passed into nirvana. When Yuki and Shindo returned to the room, they shrank back from the funeral mood for a moment, but then they joined the circle. "Come to think of it, we've been relying on Haiji for everything," Musa said. "Yeah, you're right," King crossed his arms. "Haiji took care of everything, all the admin stuff, like registering for the track meets, not to mention cooking for us. The supervisor, coach, and manager all in one," Joda said. "We did have a lot on our plate just to keep up with the practice, but even then, we've been putting too much burden on him," Shindo brooded, with a guilt-ridden look on his face. "Well, let's all pitch in from now on," Joji piped up, trying to lighten the mood. "At least take turns cooking." They all agreed. "Well, then it's time to make peace," Nico said, looking back and forth between Kakeru and Prince. "Sure," Prince said. Kakeru nodded reluctantly, feeling awkward at how childish he'd been. And you two twins, will you let Kakeru off the hook? Yuki prompted. Joda and Joji glanced at Kakeru sheepishly. They answered in sync, of course. All right, then, it's a deal, Nico said. Don't let Haiji's last wishes go to waste. Let's band together and go to Hakone. I like that they're treating him like he's dead, right? Oh, yeah, everyone shouted in unison and reached out over Kyose's futon and grabbed each other's hands in a tight grip. I don't recall ever dying. Don't jinx me. Kakeru looked down instantly. Oh my god, of course he would! Kyose's eyes were open. Sheesh, what's all this fuss about? He grumbled, shoving aside the tangle of arms over him and trying to sit up. Please, you need to rest. Kakeru hastened to push him down. You blacked out, Haiji. The doctor said you were anemic from fatigue. Oh, right. Sorry for the trouble. Kyosei looked up at Kakeru, who was peering down at him. But it looks like you've all made up. Good. Kakeru sat up straight, his legs tucked under him in the formal Seiza position, and bowed. I'm really sorry. I've been on edge and I wasn't feeling concerned. I was feeling cornered. It's the noise leaking out from Yuki's room, right? I get it, said Nico, giving him a sympathetic look. If we're talking about the noise, what about the creaks from the ceiling? Yuki snapped back and Prince flinched guiltily. It's not that, Kakeru blurted out. I've been like this since before I came to Aotake. All I ever did was run, and I couldn't see much else around me. Even now, he didn't really know what he should do. If not speed, what guiding principle should he run by? He was still looking for that answer. But he went on lifting his face. From now on, I'll aim for the Hakone Ekiden for real. What? The whole room shook. What do you mean from now on? You weren't even serious this whole time? Joji barked, ready to bite. Well, I thought I just might as well play along. That was it, Kakeru confessed. I figured that you wouldn't last long anyway. I mean, I thought you'd all get tired and quit. Sorry. I'm amazed you could put in so much work with that mindset, Shindo murmured in awe. Running is the only thing I'm good at, Kakeru said. He meant to be serious, but Yuki shook his head in mild disbelief, and King was baffled. You're a total weirdo. You're marked. You're really something, Kakeru. So out there, it's actually funny, Joji said, stifling his laugh. That made Kakeru a bit indignant. Why would I be funny? But even Kyosei was nodding in agreement, so that he didn't object. I can't quit reading manga, but I'll work harder too, Prince declared, looking up. A slight resentment still lingered in the air, but for the very first time, the same resolve flared up equally across the whole group. Kyosei, who was gazing at their exchange, called to Kakeru. Kakeru drew closer to his pillow, still sitting formally. Do you know the best compliment you can give a long-distance runner? Kyosei asked. You're fast? No. It's strong, Kyosei said. You can't pull through a long-distance race with speed alone. The weather, the course, the twists and turns of how the race unfolds, your own condition, your state of mind, you have to analyze all these different elements with composure. You have to persevere and keep moving forward, even when the stretch of race turns painful. What a distance runner must have is strength. In the true sense of the word, to be deemed strong is our honor, and that's what we strive for as we run every day. Everyone was still, hanging on to every word. After watching you run these past 3 months, I'm more than convinced, Kyosei went on. You have talent and aptitude, Kakeru. That's why I want you to believe in yourself more. You don't have to rush. It takes time to grow stronger. You could even say it's a journey that never ends. Just as there are people who go jogging or run marathons even when they're old, the long-distance race is something worth working on over a lifetime. Kakeru's passion for running always unsteadied his heart with volatile swings, like the inchoate impulses that stir in the depths of the human heart that threaten to erupt. But Kyosei's words penetrated the dim, shadowy undulations in Kakeru as vividly as a flash of lightning, setting off a cascade of light that illuminated him from within. But an old runner can't break the world record. Though he didn't mean to, Kakeru found himself arguing back, partly to hide his embarrassment. That's a bold statement, Nico joked, and Kyosei smiled as if to say, what am I going to do with you? That's what I used to think. Until I got injured, Kyosei answered calmly. They might not be able to set new records, but it is possible for old runners to be stronger than you. And that's where distance running gets deep. Kyose's words were directed not only at Kakeru, but everyone present. All the talking seemed to have tired him, and he closed his eyes. Joda and Joji cried out, "Oh, Haiji, don't fall asleep in our room!" And they tried to shake him awake. "Be quiet." "Team dismissed," Kyose mumbled. Everyone except the twins shuffled out of the room. Kakeru was the last to leave. Just as he was shutting the door, he glanced back and saw the twins cramming themselves onto another futon they'd taken out of the closet. What does it mean to be a strong runner? Kakeru couldn't understand the kind of strength Haiji was talking about. It wasn't simply about muscle power, but it also pointed to something more than just mental fortitude. Out of nowhere, Kakeru remembered a snow-covered field he'd seen when he was little. He woke up early one morning and went to a field in the neighborhood to discover that the familiar landscape completely transformed by the snow that had settled overnight. Kakeru ran across the fresh, untouched expanse of white. Letting his heart guide him, he ran to make pretty patterns in the snow, and that was the first time in his life that he felt joy in running. Maybe strength was something beautiful that stood poised in a subtle battle, like the patterns on the snow that he'd drawn that day. As a thought crossed his mind, Kakeru trod softly down the stairs. The next morning, clear blue sky stretched out overhead for the first time in a while. When Kakeru came back from his early morning jog, Kyose was feeding Nira in the yard. Kyose noticed him and said, "Welcome home." Kakeru replied, "I'm back." The fresh, dazzling light of the morning sun marked the beginning of another ordinary day. I'm sorry, what was this? What was this entire chapter? Oh my god! Well, now I'm gonna have to watch the show now, because oh my god. Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, okay. I mean, that ending part there, I mean, how many times do you have the couple come back and the one person in the couple's like, "Welcome home," and they're like, "I'm back." I do like that we're seeing more of Kakeru's cockiness, because I was starting to wonder, I was like, is he gonna, because in the anime he's pretty edgy, and I'm like, so far he seems relatively calm and under control, but this was the chapter where it's like, no, we got to meet Fujioka, and we got to see Haiji. Haiji is clearly talking about how his own experience, he's like, I was probably, and we haven't even gotten to the part about his dad yet. We haven't even touched at all on Kakeru's past incident with the team. We haven't touched on Haiji's dad yet. We haven't gotten to any of that yet at all. So that's going to be a thing. But really, I mean, I do appreciate in the anime that they showed us all the ways in which everyone was working towards their goal. And I will say, in the anime, I felt like the actual track meets, it felt there was more stakes. Like you were rooting for all 10 of them to make that under 17-minute time, and you were rooting for it. So here they kind of gloss over it more, but the whole thing of Kakeru finally like being selfish and putting all that all out there, like Kakeru lets it build up inside of him, and he gets cocky or he gets selfish, and then he lets it out, and then he quickly like humbles himself, and you're like, shit. But yeah, Kyose's speeches in this episode, oh my god, that line from the speech that's in the anime, he's like, if speed's the only thing matter, then get on a bullet train, take a flight, it's faster. And he's like, it's meaningless to chase after speed and nothing else. And he's like, he basically says that's what happened to me, and I hit my limit, and then this is what happened. Oh my god. So good. It's so good. It's just so good. I love this so much, this book, and all the little moments with Kakeru and Haiji, like get a room, you two. Get a room. We're not even halfway through the story, and just like it feels like they get off into their own little world. Sometimes they just like glance back to each other and like, you, shut up, just stop. Ah! Oh my god, it's just so good. It's just so good. Yep. It's great. I really, really enjoy this so far. This is amazing. So yeah. I'm so excited. We're going to do a part 5 next week. I'm assuming, I don't know if they're going to, in the anime, we went to a summer camp. We went to like a training camp out to prep for the prelim, and I'm assuming maybe that's what this chapter is going to be about, but I don't know what that's going to be. We're just going to find out next week. But I am going to watch some of the anime now that I'm a few more chapters in and see if we catch up to that. So I'm excited. Or at least watch up until Prince makes the prelim time. So we'll see. In any case, I'm so excited, but I hope you enjoyed this reading. I'm excited to hear your comments down below about this. Oh my gosh. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more Run with the Wind. Bye.